But today I want to welcome the Career Karma community for taking the time out of your busy days and joining in. I also want to I also want to welcome Molly, who is our guest tonight. Um, Molly is a self-taught engineer, and she's now in a position where she's doing a lot of the hiring. And some of the people that she's hiring are actually bootcamp grads. And for the call tonight, we're gonna jump in and kind of unpack Molly's story a little bit, and then we'll just open it up for our community to ask her questions. And yeah, and we'll take it from there. So I want to just say welcome, Molly. It's so great to have you here. And maybe you can just introduce yourself and share everyone kind of what your role is and kind of how did you end up being there?
Definitely. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be able to do this and kind of share my story with everyone. So I am the lead site reliability engineer currently at Kenna Security. And how I ended up there was a little bit of a roundabout path. I studied aerospace in school purely because it was interesting. I started out in a computer science class, and my neighbor at the time was doing the intro to aerospace class. And he kept coming over and being like, oh, guess what I get to build? I get to build an airplane. I get to build a parachute. And I literally thought, well, that sounds more fun than actually typing on a keyboard. So I gave up computer science in college to study aerospace engineering instead. It was great. It was awesome. Had a ton of fun. And then afterwards, we're going to segue again here, went into options trading after graduating. So I did that for a couple of years and then basically decided, I really want to get back to my roots of engineering and just creating stuff. So quit my job and took 3 months off to just teach myself how to code. And I used the Michael Hartle tutorial, which some of you guys who are kind of learning Ruby might be familiar with Michael Hartle. He's written a lot of really great tutorials. And so I literally sat down with that. I built the app that it teaches you how to build. And then from there, after about 3 months of toiling on my own, I went and got an internship at a startup. And the rest after that was basically history. I fell in love with programming. I had some great teachers and mentors from the beginning who taught me a lot. And, we got, 7 years later now, I'm at Kenna and I get to lead a team of engineers myself. And now I get to, kind of do the hiring and look for those other talented folks out there that have, been self-taught, which I can say there's a lot of. I literally had an interview today with someone who graduated from boot camp in 2014. So it was pretty awesome. They did really well.
Yeah, Molly, that's really amazing. I think people in the community can relate to your story because they're also, everyone pretty much in our community is self-taught. And my co-founders and I, we came from outside of tech, and now we're trying to pass down the roadmap and guide people into these roles. I think you're a perfect example of someone who just took your destiny in your own hands and started doing the Michael Hartle tutorial. I remember I was doing it too back in 2014 when I was just starting out. It's like the holy grail of just building an app from scratch. We don't really get a lot of people from tech like providing perspectives on what it's like to be in tech. So maybe you can share a little bit about like what does a software engineer do, and what is someone who's in your position, like what are some of your responsibilities on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, definitely. So, for most of my career, starting out, especially when I was doing the internship and stuff, day to day was basically you're coming in and you have tickets. So most companies that you're at will have some sort of project board. So they basically just lay out everything that needs to be done. These usually consist of bugs that need to be fixed in the code. Sometimes it's features that, you want to be added. And especially when you're starting out, you just take little tickets. So one might be, this button is, too far off to the right. We need this fixed. That's a bug. And so you can go in, you fix that. And as you gain more experience, then you start to tackle bigger, more, ambitious projects. And so now at my point in my career, I'm basically leading the projects, and I'm the one who's coming up with these big project ideas, and I'm the one that breaks them down and then hands out the pieces to all the engineers on my team so that we can get it done in the most efficient way. So it's luckily for me, being a software engineer, you get to spend a lot of time in the code. If you're at the right place, some places have a very, meeting centric culture. All the places I've ever worked are very focused on just producing code and writing code. And it's really nice to kind of have that freedom to just build stuff, which is, I feel like the majority people who get into this business, like that's kind of what you want to do. You want to have that ability to just be like, oh, you can build literally whatever you want, which is one of the, the aspects that I love most about this job.
Yeah, that's a great overview. And I'm about to open it up for questions. I see you have some medals or some things on your wall behind you. Do you mind sharing what it's for?
Yeah. So, okay. All of these ribbons are because I also ride horses. So that's kind of something else I also really like to talk about. And I know it can be intimidating. Sometimes you get into this industry and you see a lot of these people who do code and tech like 24/7. And I just want people to know, like, that is not, all of us aren't like that. There are a lot of very successful software engineers that don't do tech 24/7. Myself included. I ride horses. 5-6 days a week, I'm at the farm for a couple hours every day riding horses after work. So, my free time, that's how I choose to spend it. I have a lot of coworkers who are parents. And so when they go home, they're not, hacking on servers or doing personal projects. They're spending time with their family. So this is, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that I kind of like to stress is that, it's okay to take a break from tech. Like, don't feel like you need to be, in it 24/7. I feel like that is something our culture is kind of working to get away from. But just, know that, have balance in your life.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing it up because there's a lot of, I think one of the advantages why people choose tech is you're usually working like a 9 to 5. A lot of the time, you're not being judged by how many hours you spent at a job. It's more of like, what is your output? Every week, your manager is not overseeing like how, if you checked in at 9 and left at 5, it's more, this is what we need to build. Let's all work as a team to get it done. And then you also, in the process, you have to learn how to collaborate with different stakeholders, different people on the teams. I'm about to open it up. One last question about hiring. So now that you are in a position of hiring, what are some of the qualities that you look for in people that you bring on?
Yeah. So one of the first and foremost, what I look for is kind of enthusiasm. Someone who just really wants to kind of get in there and attack problems and just really wants to write good code. So usually when I sit down with a candidate, we'll be doing a coding exercise. And it's a pretty straightforward coding exercise. And during it, we expect the candidates to kind of run into bugs. We expect them to not know all the syntax. We expect them to have to Google stuff. And the candidates that I love are the ones that are just not afraid to get in there. I mean, if a bug comes up, they're putting the put statements, the print statements in there. They're jumping in with breakpoints and they're just trying to figure out what's going on. I love that because that is, this business and learning is so tough that if you are enthusiastic and you want to do it, you're just going to be, your chances of succeeding are going to be that much higher. So enthusiasm is a big one. And then the other one I also like to see is people who don't just take for granted what is happening. They want to kind of understand a level further. So you might have a statement that, pulls a record out of the database or returns some value. And I like to see people that are like, so this is happening, but why is this happening? What is actually happening under the hood? At first, you just want to learn, the semantics. You want to get that down. But as you kind of grow, kind of ask those questions every once in a while. Like, okay, what is this actually happening under here? Because that understanding is going to really help, propel you forward into just, learning more and more things.
Yeah. And I think a good analogy for that would be kind of like how you drive a car. On the surface, you have pedals, you have the transmission, right? You have the turnkey, but like a good driver of a race car, they also understand like inner workings of the vehicle, even though they don't have to do it on a daily basis, like actually fix the car. They at least know if an issue comes up, how to tackle it. And I think as people become more senior, like once you understand, not just like you understand multiple layers deep into what's happening and why, then you actually get mastery of that technology. I think it's a perfect segue to just open up the AMA to our community. As everyone knows, there's different levels. Some people are attending coding boot camps. Some people are just starting out. And this is your first day or first week in Career Karma. If that's you, welcome. We're excited to be part of your journey. But yeah, anyone want to start off and ask Molly their first question?
I do.
How's it going, Craig?
Hey, what's up, man? Hi, Molly.
Hi, how's it going?
One more thing, if you don't mind introducing yourself and then asking the question, that would be
awesome.
awesome.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm Craig. I am 2 months, I think, this coming week at Flatiron, doing Ruby, by the way. What I was curious of is when you get to the point where you're trying to apply for jobs and you're looking on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, you'll see a lot of jobs that post for a entry level or junior, senior, mid-level, front end, back end, full stack, whatever they're asking for. I know a lot of times that somebody, a CTO or somebody, talks to HR and they say, look, we need to hire 3 people, put out this ad, whatever. How serious should you take an actual job posting as far as the requirements they're asking for? A lot of them ask for, entry level with 5 years experience in React. Okay.
Oh my God, those get me. Get me. That's something I kind of talk about a lot with people on Twitter because it's ridiculous is what it is. Like entry level. So when I look at entry level, at my company, when we're hiring entry level, we don't expect any professional experience. We expect you to know what code is, know how to write it. But other than that, we don't expect anything professionally. I think, one of the things that I was kind of taught from early on by my mom, because she's a sales rep, so she's very big on personal relationships and connections, and it's all about who you know, is when I was applying for jobs, I was emailing people. So I wasn't doing through jobs boards. One of the things I did is I went on Hacker News and Y Combinator, and I just went through and looked at all the jobs that were listed, and they were all at small startups. And so I was literally emailing people. So I guess my thought is if it's entry level and they're asking for all that, those years of experience, you kind of have to wonder, is that company really ready to take on a junior? If they need someone with that much experience, then the answer is probably no. A company that is truly ready to take on a junior and mentor a junior is gonna have an accurate junior post written, in my opinion. Coming from a company, we just hired 3 very new juniors that are right out of boot camp. It took us a couple of years to get there. We didn't, early on, we didn't have the infrastructure to be able to teach them. And so we waited until we did to post those job openings. But I mean, if something really, a company is like, wow, this company looks great. My thought is go for it. Just go for it. Because the worst case they're going to do is say no. But at the same time, kind of be aware that companies that are looking for that experience might not be able to handle a junior or someone coming out of a boot camp.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Let me just add to that real quick. Most of the time, when you're looking at a job description, the way I see it is it's a nice to have. They might have 5 or 10 different bullet points. If it was easy for them to fill that role, then that job posting wouldn't be there already. But that's why it's everyone wants to have people with more experience, not less. Everyone wants to have the person with the exact specific technology that this company is using. But those people don't really exist because there's such a shortage of people with those exact skills. And so if you just apply on a website, what happens sometimes is that a recruiter who is looking to fulfill that specific role, they might overlook you because they may not know what signals to look for outside of just the number of years of experience to fulfill this role. But if you do something that Molly mentioned, where you email the person, if you email the right decision maker, or you email like a senior engineer on a team, they actually know the type of role that they're trying to hire for. So they might say, well, I know we want to get someone with 4 years of experience, but for us, actually, it's more important that this person has this specific experience or has React experience. That's why if you have that, they're willing to compromise and they're willing to bring you on board. So realize that today the application process applying online is also pretty broken. So you should always just follow your, like, take the destiny into your own hands and just reach out to the decision makers directly.
Well, you can, a lot of jobs when you, if you check out the company and you can see what kind of stack they're using, would it be good too for like your portfolio page to maybe, if you know they're using React or Vue or Angular, maybe work on something, maybe do a project so at least you have one on your portfolio when you do apply and let them know that?
Yeah, so one of the things, you know, you definitely don't want to spend too much time just focusing on like single companies. Definitely make your portfolio based on what you want a job in. But I am a big fan of tailoring resumes for a job. So if a job says they want a lot of React, make sure you highlight your React points on your resume. And then maybe your Vue or your, you know, vanilla JavaScript, maybe that's like kind of lower on the resume. So that's one thing I'm definitely a big fan of, is slightly tailoring the resume for whatever job you're applying to. And then, as we were saying before, the online process for submitting resumes is very broken. It's a lot of keyword searching, etc. So I cannot tell you guys how important it is that if you can find a side door, you can just find someone at that company and be like, hey, I'm really interested in your company. You think you could tell me a little bit about it? Just one personal connection can go a million miles when it comes to finding a job.
Yeah, and we can talk about it for hours too. So, and we have some webinars where we break down the process of just leveraging your network, because at first you might think you don't have a network of people in tech now, but if you're a veteran and you just go on LinkedIn and you look for other people from the same branch or also military, you can find on LinkedIn within a few clicks like other Air Force veterans that work at tech companies. And as long as you find someone who likes to ride horses and they're also in tech, right? So
I've had people reach out to me on Twitter and say, hey, like I'm a rider, I'm looking to get in, like, what kind of advice do you have? Yeah. I just have people who just follow me and they say, you know what, you're really inspiring. I have a couple people who are applying just based on, I've interacted with them on Twitter, and you know what, they seem to be good people, so I can at least put their resume at the top of the pile.
Yeah. And at the other side, it also just becomes a numbers game. Might sound a little transactional, but not every company is going to hire you. But if you know what you want, you have a portfolio of project, you know that you want to work for healthcare startups, then just make a list of all the healthcare startups in your area. Make a list go on LinkedIn, like do different filtering, get a list of 100 people, and then just go one by one and reach out to them. Like, there's a lot of creative ways you can approach this reach out. But I want to see if people have any more questions, because I can talk about it for hours. What other questions do you all have? And please introduce yourself and then ask your question.
I got a question. How you doing? My name is Chris. I don't know. I came in kind of late, so somebody probably already asked it, but I was just wondering, like, is there anything specific as far as projects that like companies are looking to, like looking at your GitHub to see that you've completed or started on or been a part of, or what exactly are they looking at, you know, as far as like your resume is concerned to decide whether or not you're a good candidate or a person that they would be looking to bring on to their company?
Yeah, so I can say from personal experience that at our company, we're not, you know, when we have juniors coming in, we're not super, you know, we'll look at their GitHubs, but we don't expect a lot. We're not, you know, not expecting a lot. But one thing that's nice to see is projects that are just done in whatever frameworks and whatever technologies we're using. So like we are a Ruby and Rails shop. So seeing kind of Ruby or Rails applications that candidates have built is always good. And then another kind of thing that's nice to see is open source contributions. If you have open source contributions, one, it says that you are coding at a quality that the community is, approving of. And then two, it also kind of shows that you know how to interact and work with people on kind of a project, because to do open source, you have to know how to issue a pull request, get feedback, how to deal with that feedback. And so those kind of skills, those soft skills are huge when it comes to work.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Molly, I muted you by accident. I was muting some people with
No worries.
sorry about that.
Just to expand just a little. So I was just asking because there's a lot of places out there you can kind of like code along, and it'll let you like upload it to GitHub and it'll kind of look like you did something, but like JavaScript 30, for example, you can do all of JavaScript 30 and kind of fill up your GitHub with like a month's worth of stuff, but you didn't really do anything except code along, So that was the reason for that question.
Yeah. One of the nice things that it also does is when candidates come in, it's nice to have GitHub repos to just talk about. So you can be like, hey, I see you did this project, you've been working on it, tell us about it. In that sense, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a larger project that use more than just a day or two worth of work. Because then you can kind of really break it down and step through, with the interviewer, like what you did. We've had a couple people do that, and it's been really great. It can be very intimidating when you're coming in and you're doing an interview and someone's just going to ask you a random question. If instead you have a GitHub repo that we can focus the questions on those, then it's kind of, you're familiar with it, so you're going to be more comfortable. And the interviewers get more out of it because you're able to kind of show more of what you can do because you're more comfortable and less kind of, winging it.
That makes so much sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Molly, I have a quick question. Aaron here again. As a hiring manager, obviously this is a new venture for me. This is definitely a career transition. My question is, do you run into applicants that have more of a, not just a work history gap, but more like a professional work history gap where like you're attached to like a big name company? Like for me, my last big company was with T-Mobile, which was corporate.
Mm-hmm.
But I left them in 2017, around July, and then I branched out and went into business for myself and started my own company as a reseller to, generate income for myself. And that was going well for a little bit, and then I kind of fell out with one business partner. And then from there, I decided to step back in or go revisit tech. So that's kind of why I'm here with Career Karma now and, breaking into coding. Is that something that you run into typically with applicants, or is that something that maybe hinders them, kind of transitioning from working for myself to now going back to school in a sense and kind of regaining a new, breaking into a new venture, a new career path?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So honestly, these, in the last few years, we're seeing everything. You see everything from people who are like right out of college or have had steady jobs to, we just hired someone who did a boot camp. She was an English major. She did a boot camp and then took some time off to do some like volunteering after she graduated, and then decided, okay, now I want to do software engineering. And so now she was doing boot camp and then applying to software engineering jobs. The biggest thing for us, I guess, that I like to see personally is someone who's constantly engaged in working. So like, even though you're working at different things, are you continually doing something? Are you kind of continually trying to better yourself and your skills? Even if you're not improving coding skills, if you're working at the T-Mobile, if you're, working, even if you're like waitressing or doing something, that kind of work shows that, okay, this person can, is responsible. They can hold on a job. They can communicate and talk to people. So, even the small things, even though they might seem insignificant, even working for yourself, that shows initiative. That shows someone who's willing to, take a little bit of a risk. So I think because it's, tech is becoming more accessible through these boot camps, that we're seeing all different kinds of backgrounds and all different kinds of workflows coming up. And me personally, it is not something that concerns me at all. As long as I see someone is working and, putting their best foot forward, that's enough for me. And that's enough for, a lot of companies that I've known and have talked to, some, fellow software engineers, like that, they feel the same way.
Can I also jump in and add? I think it just comes down to like, how do you tell your story in a way that resonates and like frames it to like the employer that, hey, you're the candidate for the job, and like 95% of it is how you frame it, and 5% of it is like what actually you're talking about. Because you can say like for 2 years you literally had no job, but you can be like, well, this is what I did and this is what I learned. Like, this is my thought process during this time. These are the problems that I like solved. These are the skills that I gained, and this is how that experience makes me a better candidate for the job that you're asking me to do today. And it's all about like tying it and explaining it to them. If I see a lot of people, as like humans, we're dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome a lot of the time. We're dealing with self-doubt, and it's easy for us to be hard on ourselves, thinking that like, this, right? But you got to remember that the interviewer that you just met doesn't know what you're thinking about, right? The only thing that they'll know about you is the things that you'll tell them. And so you have the control to tell them explain it to them in a way that makes you the candidate that they've been looking for all this time. Cool. Let's see if there's other questions. This is going great, Molly. Great job so far. Any other question? Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask.
Molly, I'm Thomas. I want to find out, since I'm doing full stack software engineering, I'm doing open source code in Github, and I also have a bachelor's in business management. On top of it, I want to know, can I get a job when I graduate, but how do I tell people on my portfolio that, okay, I'm for open source code, I'm doing software engineering, I have Python, I have Ruby, I have, I have a lot of programming languages, and I want to just say that, how do I make them want to hire me?
How do you okay. So that's pretty general. So first of all, you have to figure out what you want. Okay. So you kind of mentioned, okay, you have all these programming languages, which is awesome. Realistically, not, every shop is going to kind of have a separate, programming language. You've got Python, which is a lot of the fintechs are doing a lot of Python. Then you've got the Ruby and the Rails, which a lot of web developments are doing. So I think it's, bring it back to you. Don't worry about what, how do I get them to hire me? First, you want to figure out what you want. What kind of company do you want to work for? Do you just want a job, with a good salary? Is that what is important? Do you want, do you like Python?
I want to get a job doing everything. I want to be well-rounded. I want to do front end and back end,
okay,
full web development for any company.
Okay. So you're basically, language agnostic. You just want, to work the full stack. Look at the companies that you want, and then, as we were saying before, you gotta sell yourself to them. Look at their requirements, look at what the company's doing, and figure out how you can best serve that company. Especially if you want to do the full stack stuff, you are particularly valuable to like the small startups. So small startups are definitely always looking for those full stack people because they don't have the budgets to just get a front end or just get a back end person. But I mean, it's really kind of job by job. You got to look at the job, what they want, and then sell yourself to them. And then, as I was saying before, find that side door. Don't just go in the front door. Find a person, make a personal connection there that is going to help, as we say, people hire people. Companies don't hire people, people hire people. So find that person, make a connection with them, and use them to help, you know, kind of get your foot in the door. The biggest thing is show that you're enthusiastic about the company. Companies love it when a candidate comes in and they're excited about their project or they're excited about what they're doing. Nothing's worse than, so we have a candidate, you know, that'll come in and you'll be like, hey, do you have any questions for us? And the candidate says, no. Well, that's a big turnoff because we're like, okay, you know, we just spent, you know, all this time, like, you don't seem interested in that point. So I guess that's one of the biggest, that's another big thing. Show interest in the company. That's huge. You know, you want to hire someone who wants to work there. You don't want to hire someone who's just kind of like, I just want a job, so this looked okay. I mean, you want to hire someone who wants to work with you. So definitely be enthusiastic and show, you know, interest in the company. That's a big one.
Yeah. I would say also do your research. Like when you're speaking, I think one of the advantages of reaching out to a person and emailing them is that, let's say you're speaking to a senior engineer at a startup that's going to be interviewing you in 2 weeks. Most likely it's not going to be that person like signing off on your offer. It's going to be someone else on the team, and you still have to impress other people. But what you could do is you can find out like what technologies they're using. Like, are they more heavier on the front end or back end? What problems they have, like that they need to solve. Maybe they're trying to build like a video player. Maybe they want to build some new onboarding flow. And do your due diligence, like gather up info about what problems this company is trying to solve. So then when you actually show up to the interview, you're actually kind of bringing up things that they're looking to solve. So you can be like, oh, by the way, so the interesting problem I solved for my project was like how the sign up flow was going to be. And like, these are the things that I tackled. And to them, they start thinking that it's a perfect match versus what I've seen some candidates do. And I used to do that mistake too, is the recruiter, or sometimes they'll say, so what do you want to do, back end or front end? And sometimes if you say, well, I really want to do back end, and in their mind, they're looking for people with more React experience. So then they start feeling like, well, this person probably is not going to find a lot of the front end stuff relevant. So you also want to be able to gather that intel up front. So whatever you're telling them, it kind of goes along with the type of candidate that they're looking for. And I'm sure I know a lot of you are still in the very early stages of just learning the basics. So we'll have a lot more sessions about the job search and how to actually work on your specifics of your story. But let's see if anyone else has questions. I would love to see if there's any parents on the call that want to ask questions related to time management or anything like that. Anybody?
Actually, I have a question. I'm coming into the tech world, and I'm a mobile developer actually. But one of the things that I'm noticing is that there seems to be a lot more of the web development stuff going on. But what do I do to make myself inviting for an employer that is potentially looking for a mobile developer as well? And how do I manage the time between having to work full time and job searching for, you know, a career in the tech field? Yeah.
So full time and job searching, that's always hard. You've got to really like manage your time. You know, when I was doing it, it'd be kind of like at, you know, in the evenings or maybe on the weekends is when I would kind of do the job searching. I mean, that's always a hard one. It's kind of just time management. Usually companies are very respectful of the fact that you're working and, you know, when it comes to scheduling interviews and stuff, but you got to be really honest though with them. Be like, you know, hey, I'm working, you know, and I can only spare an hour here or an hour there. So just be honest about your situation when it comes to kind of planning interviews. Don't try to be the heroic, like, okay, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to run from this place to this place and get all these interviews in. Make sure you set boundaries. And most companies, most of the time when we're hiring engineers, you know, it's kind of 50-50, like not even 50-50, the majority of engineers I think that get hired are at previous jobs. And so we kind of understand that they're juggling working while interviewing. So that's definitely something that's very common. In terms of, being a mobile developer, so my first startup, we had a mobile platform and we hired a mobile guy. And one of the things that we looked for is he kind of had a small portfolio of mobile apps that he had built himself. And that was what, kind of sold us on him, is we really liked the apps that he had designed on mobile, and then they were, aesthetically pleasing and they worked well. And so that's kind of what put him over the edge for us, is that he had just made apps before. Does that kind of answer your question? Is there anything? Okay, awesome.
So I did have a question as far as like from the parent side of things. When Aaron asked this question earlier, he was asking about people with the time gap. So what about larger time gaps where, there actually wasn't any employment in between? Because in my case, for the past 10 years, I've been a stay-at-home mom. For the past 5 years, homeschooling 3 children.
Yeah. So, like I said, for me, for the community that I am in, the people that I work with, that it's not a big deal. Oh my God, I can't even tell you how much credit I give to parents. Like what parents do is above and beyond what I could ever do. And honestly, and I wrote a blog post on this, on why I think parents make the best coworkers, is because parents understand balance. They understand how to balance work and life. And so like, for example, our VP of engineering, he's a parent. And there were times when I would be working really late at night and I'd be doing stuff and he'd be like, you know what, that's enough work for now. Like, I got to go play with my kids. Let's table this to tomorrow. And he kind of set that bar that basically said, hey, you guys can work hard, but let's be realistic. Like, everyone has lives. Like, we're not going to run ourselves into the ground. So I think parents really bring a unique skill set to the table of balance, and just, I don't even know how to put this, but you have an overall wisdom, I think, that just comes with having raised children that a lot of us, myself included, I have not raised kids, just kind of like don't have. You have a whole nother life experience that for me personally is a plus when it comes to hiring. You gotta have to have your shit together if you're a parent. So for me, I do not look at it as a downside. It is a wholehearted plus. And it's not something anyone I've ever worked with has looked at. Are there going to be people out there that do look at it and say, oh, I don't know if we want this person. They spent, 5 years at home raising kids. You know what? I wouldn't want to work for those people, because honestly, if you're going to go work for them, if they don't respect the time you took off to raise children, then they're probably not going to respect your own family time when you're working for them. So, it sucks that there's companies out there like that. But I think when you're looking for a job, be very cognizant of the companies you're interviewing with. Make sure you're asking all the right questions. How much paid time off do you get? How much time do you get off if your kids are sick? How does that work? And make sure you're getting a job that is not only, they're going to hire you, but it's also going to work for you.
Okay. And my other question is, in a lot of situations, like when you're meeting new people, especially in job interviews, one of the first questions is, tell me something about yourself. I am the absolute worst person at answering that question. I literally start out with, hi, my name is Brandon. I'm like, well, duh, you know my name because I'm sitting here. I tell you how old I am. I'm like, looking over my information. You see my date of birth. You know how old I am. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing is, I'm a mom. These are my children. I'm a wife, my husband. And, I go like, how do you get better at that? Because every time somebody asks me to tell them about me, I'm like a deer in headlights. And I go straight hand answers.
Yeah, you gotta think about it. Like, there's gotta be something that kind of like sets you apart. Like if you got, 3 of your best friends together and someone said, tell me about Brandy to your best friends, what would they say? Maybe sit them down and ask them that. Like, what, you know, how would they describe you? What would they say your you know, your other passions are in life? I've kind of like, that's a trick that I've heard that, you know, if you don't know what to say about yourself, because a lot of us are, you know, and myself included, sometimes when you're asked to talk about yourself, it's like really weird and kind of awkward. And you just, you know, you kind of would just rather like sulk and be like, oh, just please read my resume. An exercise they suggest is get your best friends together, get your family together, ask people like, how would you describe me? What would you say about me? And then like, write that down and then figure out like what you can take from that and what you want then to portray to your interviewers.
Thank you so much.
You should also ask your squad. So now in Career Common, we have squads, basically people you're studying with. So if you study with someone for like 5-6 months, be like, hey, what do you think my strengths are? And just write it down. I think no one just out of the door just is good at talking about themselves. And sometimes you actually have to say it out loud for you to start thinking like, oh, like maybe I should change parts of it. So a lot of it is just gonna come with doing mock interviews, doing practice, and just don't set the expectation that your story the first time is gonna be amazing. You're just gonna have to evolve over time. And I think at some point, once all of you are in the job search, we can do like mock interviews and people can share their stories and everyone else can just provide feedback and be like, you're missing this amazing part about you that we know, but you're not sharing it with us. So don't stress over it too much. We can definitely help you craft your story as well. Sherelle, did you have a question?
I did. I was just gonna ask, I know that you said you interviewed people that were recent boot camp graduates, and it was awesome. What was it about their resume that was awesome, considering they just got out of boot camp? And for two, I was gonna ask you, like, what was like something that wowed you in the interview or on the resume that was like, oh, we're definitely getting this person?
Yeah. So first of all, the resumes, especially when you're coming out of boot camp, I personally don't look super closely at the resumes. I look at them like, okay, they got the boot camp experience in there. They've worked with these languages. They were doing, you know, school or something else beforehand. Like, okay, this person's got a good, you know, full solid resume. Okay, moving on. What I focus on is when I'm with the candidates. So actually talking to them. I primarily do coding exercises with them when they come in. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the main things I look for is enthusiasm. You know, someone who is not afraid to kind of get into the code and get dirty. We expect people to break the code when they do this exercise. We expect them to not be sure about syntax and to Google stuff. I love seeing when candidates are like, oh, I don't know how to like make this a string. Let me Google that. And they just immediately go for it. Probably the worst thing you can do is if you get into a situation where you don't know what's going on, to just, you know, sit there, deer in headlights, and not say anything. That's kind of the worst thing, because, you know, we don't know what you're thinking, you know, and if you're constantly communicating, be like, oh God, I'm thinking I need to do this here, but I'm not quite sure I do that. If you're constantly talking and attacking a problem, that is what I love to see, because that's what it takes to do this job. Is you have to just kind of keep moving. Even when you get stuck, you kind of just have to keep trying little things, even if they might seem stupid, like, oh, I don't know what's going on in this line. I'm going to put a print statement right here and just see what the output is. Even every little thing you can do is, you know, that's what makes you good at this job. And so that's what I like to see in, you know, in an interview. And then like the bonus points are when, you know, we get to a point where the candidate might have written a bunch of code and then be like, they might ask some like really thoughtful question, like, oh, like I wrote it this way, but this seems kind of inefficient. Like, what could we do this better? Kind of asking those questions, like seeing that the candidates are just thinking about that stuff is huge.
Molly, that's a great point and great advice. I think you never want to be like a deer in the headlight, because just expect your code to break. But what you should do is just kind of acknowledge that, okay, so this is not working. How can we make a part of it work? and then think to yourself, okay, so we need to maybe Google the error message. So then go on Google and drop it in, like do some research. The worst thing you can do is just like stop and not say anything, and then just start scrolling through the code or like typing code around without letting your interviewer know what you're about to do. And again, this all comes with experience. And we have about 5 minutes left. And so I'm going to ask Molly a question. I think there's a lot of people on this call that there's a lot of reasons what's driving them to get into tech, but one of the main ones is about just making a better living for themselves and their families. And so I think a lot of people would appreciate if you can maybe just throw out some general ranges for what to expect, maybe as a junior engineer, as a mid-level engineer, as a senior engineer, in terms of their career trajectory. And at the end of it, maybe you can provide some negotiation tactics that you, not like to give away what, like if you were in people's shoes and you were going for the interviews, like would you even negotiate, and how would you approach your job search?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so one thing that's great about this field is that it is a very stable career. Once you kind of get your foot in the door, you're not going to have a shortage of, of job openings. Once you kind of get going, you'll get a lot of LinkedIn recruiter messages, etc. Even after you just have a year under your belt, I think it'll blow you away. So it's definitely a very stable career. When you're starting out, oh my God, depending where you are, your salary ranges, you're going to be making, anywhere from, 50 to 70 when you're a junior. And really it all depends where you are. But then, you can even, once you get to the senior level, like the seniors are for the most part making six figures. And it's, depending on what kind of company you work for. If you decide to work for a startup, obviously it's going to be a little bit less stable. It's kind of less, you're definitely going to be just a little bit more like, okay, hopefully the startup's going to be around. You can work for a bigger company, and those are obviously as solid as they come. Tech also is really, a lot of companies have really great benefits. So you can get a lot of paid time off, which is nice. And I think one of the biggest things that tech has given me personally from a job standpoint is flexibility. And I know this is definitely a big one, especially for people who have kids, the ability to work remote. To do this job, the only thing you really need is an internet connection. And because of that, I work remote 3 months out of the year. So 3 months, every winter from January to March, I work from Florida. So I'm based in Chicago and I work from Florida because I go down there to show horses. So the ability to be able to do that and work from wherever I want is huge. And I think that's probably one of my biggest and my most favorite benefits of being in this industry. But really, like once you get in, it's very, it's as stable as they come. There's never going to be a shortage of jobs, from what I've seen and in my experience.
Great. Thank you for being so transparent. I think money is the reality of for a lot of people, like it's not just about working on interesting problems, but people want to take care of their families. They want to know if they're leaving their current career, what's the career trajectory? How does that help you get to your life goals as well? And I'm glad that you brought up that with tech companies, a lot of them will give you that balance. And I think everyone dreams about remote jobs too. So I'm glad that you have that.
Yeah. And with that said, when you're starting out, especially when you're less experienced, remote can be a lot harder, but there are companies that do have support systems in place to handle, junior remote employees. And then the other thing you mentioned that you want me to talk about was negotiating. So I was one of those people very early on when I got my tech job. I just wanted a job. I was like, give me that job. So I did not negotiate. And I was fine with that. I thought I was being paid a fair amount of money. I had some very transparent coworkers who I talked to a lot at the beginning. and they were very upfront with what they made and what I made. And so it was a very nice environment that I knew I was being paid fairly. So I had no want for more, I guess. At my current company, I have done some negotiating. It's hard for me personally. I'm someone who's just, I kind of sell myself short sometimes. But really, you just got to look at what you're worth to the company. So especially if you've been somewhere for a while, you're probably worth even more than just your experience at that point, because you have so much domain knowledge. So, but it's definitely negotiating. Like, don't be afraid to get in there, especially if you've been in a company for a while. They're going to want to keep you around. And if you just want an extra $5,000, $10,000, I mean, the amount, I've read some books on like negotiation tactics and stuff. And when you step back and you look at the cost of an employee, you got to factor in not just your salary, but you got to factor in all things like health benefits, etc. If you're only asking for a couple grand more in salary, really not that much money when it comes to the overall cost of yourself as an employee. So if that's something that kind of helps you, look at it and think, okay, maybe I should ask for more, if that kind of helps you get there to that point where, you can ask that, kind of think of it that way. But it's, negotiating is hard, and you got to just kind of go in with your gut and just trust it.
Yeah. And I think it helps to be connected to other people in the job search, so you can at least get like an idea of what the average salaries are, and not like, you don't want to come off greedy, but at the same time, there's also the art of asking like for a higher pay in a way where you're still enthusiastic about the company, and you don't come off as money driven, but at the same time, you let them know that, hey, like, you just want to get paid what the market rates are, or something along those lines. We'll definitely help people once they get to that stage. Thomas, did you have a question? We'll do one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up the call. Hey, Thomas.
Yeah, I have a question. Molly, I wanted to go back to something you said. I want to tell you something. I can work remote because I live in northeastern Pennsylvania right now. I'm trying to go to Texas, to go to Bungie, to go to Square Root, to go to Google, and I been trying to get this done so I can have a better shot at more money, because I've tried working in the public sector. It's junk. And I've already got a call last week from Bungie asking me about my opinions of the end game result for one of their games. That's where I want to go in life. I'm not doing this just to get into front end full stack. I'm doing this so I can do something I enjoy, which is coding games.
Nice.
Yeah,
so,
thanks. Sorry, Molly. I do have to wrap up the call because it's going to be ending in 2 minutes. But I wanted to ask you one last question in terms of how do people stay in touch with you? I know I connected to you through Twitter, but what is it Twitter, or what's the best way for people to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Twitter, Molly_Struve. If you go to mollystruve, allOneWorld.com, all the links to like my email, my blog, everything is on there. So mollystruve, allOneWord.com. That'll kind of get you everywhere. Email me, DM me on Twitter. Like I love talking to people. So don't be shy, don't be afraid. Shoot me an email, questions, whatever. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing this info. This was definitely special for a lot of people to hear the other side of the hiring process. And we'll definitely have you back soon, and we'll make sure to follow you on Twitter. And I want to also thank all the Career Karma members for asking such great questions and for tuning in. Let's break in, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Molly. Let's show Molly a round of applause.
Timber.
Thanks, Molly.
See y'all on the ad.
Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, and make sure to tweet at Molly. If you like this, whatever your takeaways, use this opportunity to tag Molly in your post, whatever you learned, and show Molly some Twitter love. Okay? Have a great night, everyone. let's break in.
Thanks, everyone.
Yay!